Tassless today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio radio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about, two things really. One was President-elect Trump's win a landslide win? And there's people gushing around saying it was a landslide victory. And I just want to put some perspective on that. Also to look at what is the minimum President-elect Trump, simply President Trump, needs to be able to implement his agenda. Now, remember, he's talking big here on the agenda. Large-scale deportations, sealing off the border, scrapping all this green energy nonsense, and every direction he wants to move in, from a policy perspective, he's going to have huge pushback from the entrenched bureaucracy, the deep state, the globalist activists, the media. The globalist controlled media will be howling like banshees on a permanent basis, and so he's got a lot to overcome and a lot to deal with. So what's the minimum that he or anyone who wants to implement an agenda like this needs? Remember, implementing the globalist agenda is much easier because the entire establishment supports it. Implementing a non-globalist agenda, which is what President Trump intends to do, is much harder. So you need more control. Also, the globalists are quite casual about breaking the law, trampling the Constitution, stacking courts, and running around calling everybody literally Hitler. So they're much more inclined to really play for keeps, whereas the Republicans tend to be more observant of the law and proper process, and this is something that the Trump administration is going to have to consider as to how they move forward and just how focused and intense their pursuit of these policy outcomes is. Nonetheless, what do I don't see it as a landslide election victory. President-elect Trump did slightly better this time than he did in 2016 in terms of electoral college votes. I think what was he got? I think he's got 9 or 10 electoral college more votes than he did in 2016. So I don't see any landslide there at all. If we look at, say, some of the big wins and in the graphic image, by the way, on the thumbnail is I think it was Ronald Reagan's 1984 win, where he won I think 48 or 49 electoral college states. So that was a landslide. Also, there have been a few elections where the margin between the winner and the loser has been, say, 12 million votes plus. I would look at that in the landslide category. But in this instance, the difference was that President-elect Trump won the swing states. That was the difference, and it was. I wouldn't say it was close. In those states, he was winning them by 4 or 5%, that sort of thing. So they were pretty comfortable sort of wins. It wasn't a close run thing where a few thousand votes decided it. But just to put some perspective, President-elect Trump got fewer votes in this election than he did in the last election, where he supposedly lost, unbelievably, by the way, to a hopeless candidate like Joe Biden, and he lost by 7 or 8 million votes. And Biden got the most votes in any presidential candidate in all time, 81 million votes. I'm sure that was a high integrity election. Anyway, so I wouldn't call it a landslide. Now, in the popular vote, again, President-elect Trump won by, I think, ballpark 5 million votes. And it's fairly rare, or has been for 20-odd years, for Republicans, even if they win elections, to win the popular vote, because there's such heavy voter turnouts in the popular states of New York and California and those sort of places. They tend to tip the vote count in favour of the Democrat candidate, but those votes are bottled up in just a few very blue type areas. But it means that the Republican candidate can win the Electoral College handsomely, even, but still not win the popular vote. My view is that in the 2016 election, that they did get a little bit worried. The globalists got a little bit worried Trump would win, so they conjured up a few million votes for Hillary. It was just in the wrong places, so she could run around claiming that she won the popular vote. But I don't believe that. But it was, did Trump win by a landslide? I don't think so. Again, it was only the swing states that made that difference in the Electoral College votes, but he did win the popular vote by, again, approximately 5 million. So suddenly the globalist stooges have stopped talking about the Electoral College needing to be thrown out. You know, that conversation stopped real quick when President-elect Trump won the popular vote this time around. Anyway, so I don't call that a landslide. A landslide again would be where the Electoral College, 400 plus Electoral College, that would be a landslide, or 12 million plus popular vote margin, that would be a landslide. But I don't see this as a landslide. I think in reality, the 2020 election probably would have been a Trump landslide if not for the illicit shenanigans that went on. I think Biden would have got somewhere about 61 million votes, give or take, and Trump 74 million. So that would have qualified as a landslide. But anyway, again, the globalists corrupted and subverted that election. As, by the way, if they can't get their own way, they will corrupt and subvert anything that they cannot control. So, and this is what they're going to do to, if they can, to a Trump presidency as the president takes office. Now, what levers of power does somebody need if they want to implement an agenda? This could be any agenda, by the way, regardless of what it is. They need certain levels of control. So they need control of the House of Representatives. So the committees and all that sort of stuff can. They need control of the Senate to pass legislation, but also to make sure they appoint constitutional rather than activist judges. The Biden administration has been frantically stacking the judiciary at all levels with radical two-bit activists. People you wouldn't employ to sweep the floor are being appointed as judges simply because they're radical activists. And some of them seem to have an IQ of, I doubt it's even 80 in some cases, if you look at the Senate hearings that have gone on. So this is very important about appointing judges. There's unlikely to be another Supreme Court appointment in the next 4 years, possible but unlikely. But the Supreme Court at the moment has a constitutional judge majority, which was unlike when President Trump first held office in 2016. It was pretty much a split Supreme Court, and things could go in any direction, and they tended to go in the activist direction more often than not. So for the first 2 years, though, we need to go back to 2016. President Trump was in office, so they held the presidency. The Republicans had a majority in the Senate, although they had two rhinos like what's his face, Flake, and that other idiot in there. So they had a decent working majority in the House, but again, some rhinos in there. Even so, the Democrats and the deep state were very successfully were able to harass and impede nearly all Trump's policies that he wanted to implement then. And it seemed that the Trump administration, Jeff Sessions, those sort of guys, that they just seemed to be confused, almost paralyzed, like deer in the headlights type thing happening. And they didn't seem to know what to do and how to deal with it. They obviously weren't prepared for the vicious and venomous attack by the deep state and the harassment, and also the absurdity of trying to delegitimize Trump by saying, well, Putin got him in power because the Russians hacked our election. They hacked it. Well, what did that even mean? And initially the Democrats were able to go onto the front foot there and really didn't get much pushback. So in spite of that, and then the inevitable court cases and activist courts and activist judges constantly impeding a massively well-funded NGO network. And this is something that the Trump administration needs to act on day one. These people are all acting as charities. They're given charity status, and they're able to have international offshore funding. And that should be jumped on immediately. They're not charities. They're radical political activists. Withdraw all their charity status, and if they get even a penny from international funding, guys like Soros, then they should be dragged into court for that, in my view. So again, you want to be neutral and you want to help people, run soup kitchens or something, fine. Nothing wrong with that. But if you want to be politically active and start funding groups that hate America, then no, we're going to go after you, and that should be one of his. I would think. Now, in terms of the Attorney General, that role needs to be filled by someone who knows knows how to get down and dirty, maybe a Rudy Giuliani or somebody like that, who knows that the lawfare tricks that the Democrats get up to, the globalist Democrats get up to, so that they know how to fight that battle and get again, roll around in the mud and do the biting and the scratching and things that need to be done. Jeff Sessions just wasn't that sort of guy. I think he was a good man, intending to do good and well intentioned, but they completely knocked him, completely put him on his back foot, and I don't think he ever recovered. So Trump has control of the House and the Senate, or the Republicans rather have control of the House and the Senate. They've got a constitutional Supreme Court and, of course, the presidency. Now, a lot of those things, that they pretty much had all of those things in 2016, but still Trump couldn't get that much done. Now, there's people inside his administration while protesting that they were loyal supporters and followers, were in reality slow walking and hindering the policies that he was trying to put in place, and working in tandem with the deep state and the media to spy on him, ambushing his selecting guys like Mike Flynn and so on. Now, they went after Flynn because they couldn't control him, whereas some of the others that were clearly slow walking and obfuscating Trump's agenda, they were left in place because they were serving the globalist interest. But assuming Trump's team is in place, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Stephen Miller, others, then they can really move quickly, and they have to move quickly. There's a possibility that they'll lose control of the House and or the Senate in 2 years' time, so they have to move quickly. They really have to and then go after the people that oppose them, in the same way that the Democrats go after people that disagree with them. So this time around, the only difference between now and or the differences between now and 2016 is Trump can put a team together that's far more savvy and far more in full and serious support of his agenda, his policy platform, and he's got a constitutional Supreme Court. That can make, of course, a huge difference. And like in 2016, Trump was going to some Washington insiders and say, well, who should I appoint in this job or that job, or who should I give this job to? And then they would recommend other deep state operatives, and you need Billy Bob here and Jimmy Jack there, and these people were in fact deep state operatives. Or even if they weren't deep state operatives, they were mindful, and the deep state would remind them, look, Trump's only going to be here for a short time. What sort of career do you think you're going to have in Washington if you don't do what we tell you to do? Now, we're telling you to slow walk his agenda. We're telling you to somehow prevent it from being moved forward. Do anything you want, but just slow it down, and tip us off and let us know what's going on, and we'll use the media to embarrass him and so on. So they could get to people much more easily then than I think they could now. And so Trump was appointing these people thinking that, well, the insiders sort of know how it works, and they know how to relate to the people in the political edifice and so on. So it's probably better we have these people who understand the game and how it works. But in fact, he was handing power or the power to disrupt and obstruct. He was handing it to really, as I would argue, deep state operatives, or those who came under the sway and control of the deep state. So now this time around, and when Trump's and some of his advisors, they're onto this, and they can have appoint people that are very committed, fully committed to the president's agenda and policy platform, and who won't put up with any nonsense or obstruction or so on. And if I was in there looking after the department, then I would be quickly looking for deep state operative, anyone who slow walks or obstructs or pretends special committees or commissions have to be convened to no. Here's the agenda. Now, if you're not going to implement it, then you'll need to look for another job. It has to be that, and that's the way the Democrats treat people. You're there to implement the globalist agenda. That's it. They don't care if you've got an IQ of 80. They don't care if you break the law. They don't care what you do. You are there to implement and protect the globalist agenda. And if you can't do that, you're out. And I think the Republicans and particularly the Trump administration need to take a view that's along those lines. So anyway, the Trump administration has majority in the House and the Senate. I don't think that the counting for the House seats is actually finished, but I'm assuming at this stage at least that they'll have a majority there. And so they can control the committees. They also can prevent harassment committees being set up that the Democrats and the deep state use against anyone who's not on the globalist agenda, but they'll use against Trump. So they can at least prevent that from happening. But they have to move aggressively and decisively while they've got these pieces in place, because they won't be in place, may not be in place for that long. A neutral Supreme Court is vital, and they have to as soon as anything is obstructed by an activist judge, they have to move aggressively to get it into the Supreme Court and courts of appeal and so on, where the globalists have less control. And if it turns out that every case that's being heard happens to get heard by a radical activist judge, they have to go after the court administration, the court clerks, the court managers. They have to go after them and prosecute them for willfully subverting and perverting the course of justice, because this is definitely happening, no question of it, and these people have to be gone after. So anyway, this is a better place for two reasons than it was in 2016. The Trump agenda, I mean, because they're savvier and they're going to appoint more committed people, and they have a neutral Supreme Court, and of course the Senate and the House. So they've got to get on with the job, and they've got to hit it hard and hit it quickly, not recklessly, but act decisively. Now, I think they've had plenty of time to think about the policies they want to implement and how they want to implement it. This is something that struck me about 2016, was that while Trump had the policies, how are they going to implement it and how are they going to make it happen on the ground? They didn't seem to have thought that through very well, and it seemed rather clumsy, I thought. And some of the court representations made seemed clumsy, and the way that they kept getting dragged in front of activist judges and seemed to be bewildered. Oh, how is this happening? So, no, they're happening because it's been set up that way. They're deliberately doing it. Go after the people that are making that happen. And if you can remove that lawfare factor, you'll find it much easier to implement those very important, very necessary policies. Now, if these policies are implemented and successfully implemented, and I certainly for one hope they are, such as the remigration, the sending all these illegals back to where they came from. And if people are recent citizens or have work permits or something and they're breaking the law, like those crime gangs in South America, evict them. I mean, don't fuck about it, just do it. And if these sort of things happen, and if there's heavy penalties for employing illegals, all this sort of stuff, then the whole lot's going to change. The price of energy is going to come down with the Trump policies substantially. I think it'll be more than half. It'll come down by electricity and so on. Housing prices and rentals will go down substantially, I would argue, and food prices and so on. So this is something that is going to make a huge material difference to the lives of Americans. Now, once all those illegals are gone, because I don't know how many are voting, I would think a few million, and the various schemes of like giving them driver's license, and then they can vote because they've got the driver's license. That's the ID. If all those people are gone, then a substantial portion of the Democrat voting base will go with them. And that again will realign the structure and the architecture, if you like, of the voting blocks in the US, which can only benefit again. Say in the case when Trump has finishes his term, that JD Vance, hopefully, or someone in that caliber takes over and can still continue with that agenda and make sure that America is never again swamped with millions upon millions of illegals arriving every year. You've been fantastic today. Your pushback challenge. Thank you for listening.